health positions and subcenters, which is the basic level. Then we have call centers and ISACASI and regional hospitals. In the social insurance organizations, we have primary care for health, units for primary care in health, polyclinicals, and regional hospitals. From CAPS and labs, on the social insurance, we have regional coordination, national hospitals, and super-regional hospitals that later form the offices, national offices for registering statistics for health. In the Ministry of Health, we have hospitals, national hospitals, which are 4, in the health regions, which are 15, and the Department of Registry and Statistics nationally, with national. And the Ministry of Health, which are about 357 facilities, with a fully installed human resource, 357, and 42% of these facilities have the health information electronic system, so an automatized system. The social insurance organization, 100% of their facilities also have a system, an information electronic system, the SIS. Both systems are from a Spanish consortium, the same consortium. Related to background, we implemented ICD-10 for 1997. In the implementation, they train nationally human resources for registering statistics in health on the MINSA and Social Insurance Organization, CSS. 15 health regions and about 430 facilities with the support from MINSA and the National Institute for Statistics and Census, INEC. Currently, we are in the 4th edition, before the last one, they implemented the 4th edition, 2008, with updates to 2013. And in this period, 2 collaborators were trained on the first virtual training course, 10 collaborators from the second virtual training course, and on site, 1 collaborator, which is me. I was trained in Mexico by the SEMESE team. For 2015, we implemented the 5th edition for 2015 for 2017, which is the one we're using right now. In the basic virtual training course, 10 collaborators were trained from MINSA and 8 from the Census and Statistics National Institute, INEC. Related to updates, no trainings on site have been performed. Only the presentation of the updates on a central level, and there was a distribution of the update tables to all the areas from MINSA and INEC. What's needed to implement ICD-11? I have 7 key points. The first one, the presentation to the ICD-11 authorities. It's been mentioned before that many don't know what ICD-11 is. What is ICD-10? When we go to ICD-10, 11, they don't know because they don't know about the 10th. So we need to present. It is a new architecture with new terminology, the inclusion of textual definitions on the categories, that they're no longer 22 chapters but 27, coding with more details, extension codes, and that they can work with a virtual environment. We need to mention about the virtues to see why it's important to do this transition. Secondly, to train necessary human resources with the support of the WHO to multiply nationally the use and management of this new revision. Within this group that we want to train, we have physicians, nursery staff, and technicians. And finally, the collaborators team for registering statistics in health. You may wonder why I have last collaborators from registry and statistics and health, because the current situation is that the clinical care staff is the one coding. They are doing the selection by themselves in the codes with the electronic system. Third, a revision of interoperability of electronic systems. Since there are two systems, SIX and SIS, we need to know if this new technology will be interoperable in these two systems. Fourth, having necessary volumes before beginning this implementation nationally. Fifth, having proper license and permits necessary for the users in the country, and also if their use will be limited to licenses. I still don't know. I don't know if we'll need any licenses for the use of this system. Six, necessary technological team, appropriate team according to the properties of ICD-11. And seven, having and maintaining internet service in all facilities that provide health care. It's a huge problem we have really, because the use of these two systems, SACE and SIS and ICD, limit us in the management of internet, because the management of a system takes all of the bandwidth. So we are quite limited in the management of internet. If some people might have access to internet. So what institution, if applied, will be responsible for implementing ICD-11? It seems to me, and I have as a leader the Ministry of Health, of course with the support of the social insurance area and the National Institute for Statistics and Census. We've always had their support. But now from the Ministry of Health, we don't have a form team for the updates of ICD-10, even less for the implementation of ICD-11. From the Ministry of Health, the only one doing some management, because 4 years was being done with another colleague, but she retired, and so alone I'm doing these updates with ICD-10. 1 minute. What are the resources visualized as necessary for the implementation of ICD-11? I just have two, which are training and manuals. Related to training, an estimation of 64 collaborators, which would be the multipliers, which are 30 for the Ministry of Health and 30 for the social insurance organization, since we have 15 regions in the social insurance organization and 15 from the Ministry of Health. Related to 4 collaborators for statistics from INEC, yes, on the central level. Also, related to manuals per facility, we require an estimation of 441 manuals, because what's currently being done, we received 59 manuals with the last update, so the edition for 2015, and these 59 manuals, I have to do basically magic, because it wasn't enough even to educate the 30 regions in terms of health. 15 from MINSA, 15 from the social security organization, so 357 for the facilities of the Ministry of Health, 79 manuals for the social security organization, and 15 for statistical census. This is an estimation for the distribution of manuals, and with this I finish my presentation. I don't know if you have any questions. Thank you so much. Now, the Cuban Center will present their lecture. Good afternoon. I think I'm going to be very brief. because many of the aspects have been discussed yesterday and today. The topic is similar, what's needed to implement ICD in my country. The topics very fast are before ICD 11 implementation, awareness for sanitary authorities and training and forming a legal framework, training in ICD 11, development of technological infrastructure in the support and automatized systems, and generalization on the implementation. Before the implementation, some questions we need to make clear before the implementation process. What is the support of ICD 11 used that we'll see? We have the possibility to have digital support with a WHO server, the possibility to of digital with a server that is national or also local in the machine, and the other one might be printed books. I have to say, if you're using a combination on all of them, and updates and modifications in short periods, because we need to maintain those updates as it has happened on ICD-10. Almost every year there are updates, and we need to take into account in order to observe the variable that must be better to use. So we have available the automatized coding systems and selection of basic courses and main courses to see if we use manual coding or automatized coding. What is the minimum level to report international organisms? I was asking throughout these days, we've seen if it's just the first, the code of the main code, the basis, or the basis with another basic code. Is it a link or different variables? Or are they going to be captured with different variables with each one of these codes? And it's going to be necessary to make adjustments on the medical certificates, death certificates, because it takes time to make changes in the model. On awareness for sanitary authorities and forming a legal framework, first we need to get the Public Ministry of Health involved, the area of medical care, epidemiology, medical registries and statistics, which would deal the extraction, the area of logistics for everything needed for the implementation, the academical sector, because they are the ones teaching the classes and training technical staff with licenses, with PhDs, and the informational area, which is key, and must have knowledge on changes, the National Office for Statistical Information and the Ministry of Justice, since they are also users in the information of mortality in this case. And so we will need to issue a ministerial resolution where a national commission creation is approved for the implementation and to propose an implementation flowchart that would end up as another solution, which is what they're using ICD-11 starting from a specific point of time. In the implementation, we have to train the national instructors in ICD-11 in national or international training courses, the development of standardized educational material, and see if you're using on-site or virtual modality or both. And then the formation of national codification of ICD-11 with these national instructors, whether in mobility, modality, or both. We need to certify coders to train them on ICD-11, to have update training courses for codified that allow sustainability of this ICD-11, to establish content on ICD-11 in study programs, in training person and staff, and universities and also technical, because they will be using ICD-10, and now we're going to have to elaborate some content for the programs for ICD-11 to implement discussion forums on ICD-11, because at the beginning there will be many doubts on ICD-11 and training to the staff, the users of the information. Development of technological infrastructure for support of ICD-11. This is highly related with the type of support being used in ICD-11. Availability of equipment in the places where it's going to be coded, if they're using automatized coding, availability for connectivity for the national navigation browsing system, unless it's an external server, not local, where ICD-11 is, and if the printed form is being used in the distribution of this printed version of ICD-11. To adequate automatized systems to ICD-11, all of the systems used with the codes with ICD-10 must be updated in order to allow capturing the codes with the new structure, validation of data on these codes of ICD-11 as it's being done with ICD-10, automatized processing of information, and the generation of reports. So it must have a good implementation on how to recover information being introduced with the codes of ICD-11. And then the implementation of ICD-11 that can be done first, a pilot implementation test in a localized territory. Then there will be the generalization of the implementation. You need to specify if you use it for a while to read minds, ICD-10 and ICD-11. You have clarity that ICD-11 might remain alone after this period of working in parallel, and studies planning on the change effects on the classification, which are the bridge studies we've mentioned before. Thank you very much.
A continuación,
Now we'll have the presentation by Guatemala.
buenas tardes. Yo no voy a
Good evening. I will not give a presentation. I just want to talk a little bit about how we, or rather about the point of view we have as Guatemala. I focused on the challenges we face, the challenges we have as a country. Everything that's been said by my colleagues is issues that need to be taken into account because these are activities that have to be done. But I was thinking about, or we were thinking about this in Guatemala, like picking up on three main strategies that we have to work on. Well, first we have to see the point that we need to take the leap, if you will. We all use ICD-10 for morbidity and mortality, and then we have to look at how are we going to distribute ourselves, or what our schedule will be like for implementation of ICD-11. And we saw this in two phases. How are we going to be implementing this for mortality, for coding mortality, and the implementation for coding morbidity, because these are a little bit of different things. Concerning mortality, I think it's a little bit easier for all of us because this is centralized. In Guatemala, well, we need to have an interinstitution coordination between the National Institute of Statistics and the National Registry of People. Statistics, well, as we know, are those who code, and the Registry of People are those who have the vital statistics. Here, the Ministry of Public Health, who I'm here on behalf of, doesn't have that much influence because we, as Ministry of Health, don't code that. The INE does that, but we need to have the knowledge and the coordination concerning mortality. We then have this aspect of using death certificates and the current legislation. We have a death certificate which is official, but it's never used because, yeah, I know. Raise your hand if you feel identified or you can relate to me. I mean, in some countries we have a certificate, an official certificate, but it's not exactly used. And we go into legislation. In Guatemala, the death can be certified by medical personnel, um, and or the authority. Thing is that who is this local authority? It might be the person in charge of a village, and also I don't know, for example, as in a household, with the household owner being the authority. And if I just go and said, okay, this is a death certificate and this person died of love, with a paper like that, and this is actually legal for these purposes. So we have those inconveniences talking about mortality. So in mortality, we have to look at where we are in terms of legislation, how we are doing in terms of the use of the certificate, this issue of what do we do in terms of even the authority being able to sign a death certificate. And mobility takes another path. In mobility, well, there are the two main servers or two main service providers in Guatemala, the Ministry of Public Health and Social Security. For the Ministry of Public Health, which, well, I see this as easy as me having an information system that all networks use, and I have uploaded ICD-10 into that server, and then I have to see how I upload ICD-11 because that will happen automatically, right? And when someone is typing the information, this person can either type the code or the description of the event. But that's the easiest part. The main point is how do I make it so doctors and others can adequately describe? How can I make it so those people in charge of typing can learn how to correctly identify the corresponding code? And here you have all these issues about training that we have already discussed with our colleagues. So as I was saying, IT-wise, I see implementation as something really easy. Use is the main problem, how it's going to be used and how we're going to interpret this. And for that, we know people with good enough knowledge of ICD-10, ICD-11, who can train others and also change some reports. These are some very, very important things. I can say, okay, starting today, I have the statistics which were developed according to a coding in version 10. And statistics starting from February, for example, were done using ICD-11 coding. Please, when interpreting this, be mindful of these aspects. It's very important to take this in mind. And finally, this is the third aspect I see here, which is about how are we going to get to the authorities. We were talking about the fact that what we have to work in now is an evaluation and start doing exercises and activities to present to the authorities and say, okay, we have the statistics right now in ICD-10, and this is the profile being presented, and in ICD-11, this is the profile being presented. And then it's up to you to see which changes are going to be taking place, and then you tell me. Concerning maternal death, for example, or concerning sustainable development goals, which is really important. Now in Guatemala, actually, it's an election year. We are going to have changes in our government and authorities, which is a vital aspect for statistics because, as we know very well, indicators and numbers and all that is are really important, and we have the obligation to say, okay, this is what we have here, this is what you have there, and it's up to you and decide because the decision it's not ours to decide. Our responsibility is to present the reality of the fact. So we also have this assessment of possible changes in statistics for being presented to the authorities, so they can decide what to do, right? And this is where we need to be really careful. People in charge of statistics, and in Guatemala we discuss this a lot, we need to be really careful because, as we always say, there are some little lies, large lies, and then we have statistics. And then it's about being as transparent as possible because all of this is in the hands of the decision makers, and those are not us. So these are the three main areas I have. So how are we going to get into mobility and decision makers?
Bueno, para finalizar este primer bloque de la tarde, a continuación República Dominicana con su presentación.
Buenas tardes. Bueno, a mí me tocó de último, espero que no se duerman, y es bastante cortito. ¿Qué necesitamos en República Dominicana? Nosotros estructuramos la presentación en tres aspectos. Una era hasta qué punto nuestros elementos estratégicos permitirían la implementación de la ciencia en el país, cuál es la institución que realmente está llamada a esta implementación, y por último, los recursos. Por favor, o soy yo que la muevo. ¿Acá? Ah, con esto. Bueno, con relación a los elementos estratégicos, actualmente es una política del gobierno ya en su segundo periodo, lo que se está llamando República Digital, donde a través de las instituciones estatales como educación se ha venido priorizando el acceso a la educación a través de los medios digitales, acceso a Internet, y en salud lo que se ha priorizado es el expediente clínico integral, expediente integral de salud. La idea que se quiere es que tanto en lo público y en lo privado, pero se está iniciando por lo público, el expediente se mueva con el paciente. Entonces, se ha empezado desde el año pasado con este gran proyecto. Y yo pienso que en términos estratégicos es un punto que nos facilita, porque actualmente se está haciendo una inversión. Todos nuestros hospitales tienen acceso a Internet por una cuestión de facturarle a la seguridad social. El régimen subsidiado, que es el que paga el Estado, se atiende a través de los hospitales y por lo tanto se ha venido haciendo una inversión en lo que es el acceso a Internet, computadora, pero ahora hay una inversión más grande porque implica que cada médico desde su consultorio pues acceda al expediente electrónico. Entonces esto es un aspecto estratégico que favorecería esta implementación. También en mayo tenemos que tener actualizado todos los reglamentos técnicos de lo que es la documentación clínica, actualizar porque los procedimientos para estadísticas vitales se documentaron cuando era en papel y desde el 2014 estamos teniendo tanto el registro de nacimientos como de defunciones a nivel digital. También la existencia de una comisión de estadísticas vitales, que el reglamento de nuestro sistema de información llamaba a la conformación, y desde el 2013 se ha venido reuniendo mensual o cada 2 meses y nos ha permitido actualizar, integrar bases de datos con otras instituciones y modificar nuestro certificado de defunción, que cada año se hace una impresión en papel y este comité que decide si se introduce una nueva variable, qué cosas van a cambiar, etcétera. Entonces, yo pienso que en términos estratégicos esto es un punto importante. Por otro lado, en este año, creo que para el 20 de febrero ya, estamos trabajando con las prioridades en salud para nuestro próximo plan decenal. Y el sistema de información es un eje importante dentro de este plan decenal del sector salud, que involucra todas las instituciones, además del Ministerio, el Servicio Nacional de Salud, los hospitales públicos, que son alrededor de 206, las unidades de primer nivel de atención, que hay alrededor de 2.000 a nivel de todo el país, pues se gobiernan a través del del Servicio Nacional de Salud. Entonces, el plan involucra a cada una de estas instituciones, la de la Seguridad Social. La sensibilización es un elemento también importante, estratégico, a todos los actores del sector con relación al desarrollo de capacidades para el personal de salud, porque la implementación de la CIE-11 implica, como ya los anteriores han mencionado, las academias, o sea, todos los actores involucrados dentro del sector. Bueno, ¿quién está encargado de esta implementación? A diferencia de otros países, nuestras oficialías civiles no codifican, nuestra Oficina Nacional de Estadística no codifica morbilidad ni mortalidad, por lo tanto, esta implementación le tocaría al Ministerio de Salud Pública. Dentro del Ministerio estamos actualmente en una reestructuración y en este caso, para todo lo que es documentación, procedimientos y acompañamiento a todo el desarrollo de los sistemas, está la Dirección de Análisis de Situación de Salud y Evaluación de Resultados. De esta dirección depende el Departamento de Estadística e Información de Salud, a partir de ahora de la nueva reestructuración, el Departamento de Análisis de Situación de Salud y el Departamento de Identificación y Evaluación de Intervenciones Sanitarias. Los recursos que requerimos, indiscutiblemente el recurso humano es vital. Y aquí la disponibilidad de codificadores e instructores para la CIE-10, CIE-11 es importante. Con la CIE-10, que la trabajamos para mortalidad desde el 1996, pero a partir del 2013 se fortaleció lo que fue la capacitación. Empezamos con las unidades desconcentradas del Ministerio, que eran las direcciones provinciales de salud. Todos los estadísticos de estas instancias fueron capacitados. Se ha mantenido la capacitación en actualización y a partir del 2015 para acá, que se instaló también el sistema automatizado
So installed an automated system for vital records, and we started working with coders and statisticians at the hospital level. So there is now, what's the danger? We need a replacement population, if you will, because the average age range on statistics and coding is very high, over 50 years of age. So whether people like it or not, concerning the use of technology. Now, this Spanish training materials, we have been copying a lot of that for our training sessions, and the CMC has given this information very kindly with access for institutions, because, for example, for some systems, they use an intranet of the ministry, but this makes it so people need to have access. For example, if the doctor wants to query or consult on his or her phone, this person can do so. And I believe we are the country where smartphones are used the most. It doesn't matter if we are talking about an illiterate person, everyone has a cell phone. Anyone was talking, for example, of this cholera outbreak we had on the island, that whether you like it or not, you cannot hide cholera cases because even the next door person knows about cholera out cases. So we are going to be requiring this tabulation list and equivalence tables, because for it's really important in transition processes. We are going to have this ICD-10 code, and we'll be using ICD-11, because no matter how much we train people and are like, okay, tomorrow we get started on ICD-11, there will always be a remote place where someone is still coding under ICD-10. So we are going to have to do something so we can analyze our situation in a better way. And of course, the availability of financial resources in institutional budgets, because this cannot be just based on, and we get many loans from the World Bank, the IDB, but so this can be sustainable, it needs to be within the national budget so we can go about doing these implementations. In the case of the República Digital, basically, this is being funded by the central government. And finally, and I will be wrapping up, and if you want things to change, don't always have the same answer for the same problems. Even though we move ahead really slowly, then maybe we can take this turtle and put it on a skate and see if we go faster. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Cuba, Panama, Guatemala, and Dominican Republic. Perfectly on time. I'm not sure if you have any comment or a question. Dr. Justin, Manuel, then. Cuba and Guatemala mentioned something we think is really important. When, in almost all countries, the National Statistics Institute are the guiding entities for statistical information, and they have rules and procedures imposed on sector-wide or national statistic area to comply with them, and especially when establishing some changes in historical series. And this is something that happens very often in about employment, for example, when there is a change in working hours on unemployment rates, it's necessary for the person or the group doing that to have a historical series overlapping with the new one or going in parallel. I mean, it's not the ministry who is going to be electing whether he likes ICD 10 or 11. You have to show that to the minister what this is about, and the only way to do so, well, there are two actually. Install ICD 11, or rather you code backwards, for example, 5 or 6 years, and you overlap this with ICD 10 and you showcase the changes, or as soon as you install ICD 10, you code and there's both classifications for 5 years from now, and then, and these are some statistical norms acknowledged by the Union of Statistical Division. So in this connection of between both theories is where the researcher can realize, because this person can show the difference, the contribution of the actual change and the technical change. If we don't know to what extent the change in a historical series of an indicator, if we see that the indicator goes up from this new classification or goes down, we need to know what part is related to a political action and which part is about technique. And what Cuba said is perfect. Cuba needs to have this connection, and in your case, you have to do it because the minister is going to pick and choose the lower number and what is more convenient for him or her. Just a question. Currently, we can have a bridge study, for example, between ICD-10 and ICD-11, using what we have in the series of equivalence you showed us. Okay, so then that can be a good starting point. We can pick up the statistics we have in ICD-10 and apply the equivalences found in. No, this is a way in which this can be done today. And the second way is when we have an automated code system for selecting this the underlying cause, and you can use this. It's the same data, but now you have this in an electronic manner. It's very easy to do this analysis and also see the impact of these new rules and data. But first, it's about doing exactly what I did before, also Patricia. Um, then you see what happens. At the end of the day, as we saw, the main groups don't change. This was one of the most important things when we worked on ICD-11. Main groups are not going to change for statistics that have to be longitudinal. I just wanted to make a few comments concerning the presentations, which were excellent, by the way, and because we heard about the experience of each country, and we were able to learn a lot concerning what Guillermo from Panama was commenting on training doctors. And really, we have been bombarded, if you will, and well, Spanish, for example, have been developing electronic medical records where the doctor is forced to code. And they have been faced with the reality that this list of category doesn't have inclusion terms where the doctor approximates the diagnosis to. But developers, since they don't know, they just pick up a volume 1, then they paste it, and then they present this to our authorities. And when we get access, then we tell them, hey, what happened, and so on. And not even the developers know sometimes. when I told my staff director, hey, let's see how this is going, and they give you the demo, and I was like, okay, membrane disease is a very common diagnosis in these certificates, and he said, you're not going to find that, and it's not going to be there because it's an inclusion term for a subcategory, which is the breathing difficulty syndrome in newborns. So of course the doctor will try to look for it. So what's important for countries? Why? Because while we have been fighting, so the doctor doesn't code unless he or she has gone through a course and knows how this goes, so he or she knows how to assign the code, then we have to take this into account because at the end of the day, in Mexico City we have 32 states, and some of them are using these electronic medical records. And I'm also commenting my son is studying medicine, and he's like, okay, every time you have been trying, doctor, not to codify, we are told to look for the code every time, and people don't go to the ICD. They go to internet, and he asks me, hey, what code do I enter here? And they get a totally different diagnosis. Ever since current doctors are being educated, they are forced to codify, at least in Mexico, in many places. So at some point, because I've always been opposed to this, I was like, hey, are you opposed to the doctor not being able to code? No, they can. They have the capacity for that and more, but they have to be trained, because then it's difficult. Then it's okay though, but we have to train them for that. In the case of Guatemala, also in Mexico, they are certified in certain functions by non-medical personnel, by paramedic personnel, because we do have this reality where in some areas there is no doctor, but there is personnel already authorized by the health secretariat in the same, well, by the health secretariat for them to certify they are authorized. So it's important that when you analyze information, we do need to make that differentiation. How many were filled by the doctor that where we're expecting specific diagnosis, and how many by non-medical staff where we have garbage codes and symptoms, sign, and so on. And in the case of Dominican Republic, I'm not sure whether the doctor in this integral health record is coding. We may think that yeah, he is, because all electronic records, at least in CEMES in Mexico, we did all this review of private, public hospitals and so on. And in all cases, we are looking for the doctor to code.
Another aspect was mentioned by the doctor that modifies the certificate every year. This is a personal opinion, but this is a bit risky to modify each year because then there's no consistency between variables. However, that's it. Thank you. So we have to go to the discussion, but one last. Okay, Okay, just two. I'm sorry, but we need to make the work group. And sorry, two. Then Dr. Emiliana to talk about the Dominican Republic case. I just wanted to talk about a point that we actually saw this in the experiences mentioned: Mexico, Argentina, and Chile. And now it was mentioned by the colleagues from Cuba regarding forming the group. I think it's really important to formalize that group, to have all the key players, for them to make their supports. And another key aspect, we've talked about these days, that it's not just loading a catalog. We need to make many actions that will go along with the implementation, and those actions require for a budget. And they have specific competencies, as Alejandro said. There are things that are competences from specific institutions and some others from others. So forming this group in a formal way, we can take the example from Cuba. This could warranty or to promote for institutions to take over the commitment and also to somehow secure the budget. So it's not just responsibility of one organization, but the whole country is involved with all the key players, and I think it's a valuable element for us to take it to the following work. Amanda, I have to clarify, it's not that we change it every year. Every year we discuss the variables. So from 13 till now, which is when we've begun in the 14th with the automatization, we needed to change the format because automatization would start with the electoral identification of each citizen, and it was on the half of each certificate. So we modify this, but it is a modification done with everything: civil society, statistics, the whole epidemiology. The last modification in the certificate that we performed was related to the question of violence. It was non-specified due to the controllership when issuing autopsies. Sometimes we know that there's violence, but the intention was not specified. So the question didn't adopt this, and everything was not clear. So it was introduced, but in our certificate, in basic terms, apart from the 14 till now, it's basically the same structure. And the birth certificate, because the Statistics National Office doesn't ask to include the education of the mother, which we think it's an important variable. So from the benefit, this benefit is, since we do this launching each year, if we incorporate one variable, we have to work with technology, and we begin in 2019 with a new change. When you load this information, that is information that will be there. And the physicians in our country are making the selection on the causes directly from the catalog mandatory. However, and this is worse, now that the medical terminology has been included in the medicine careers on the 7 universities we have, they do know the series on the master's degrees in public health and so on. So on that side, we need to improve that training. Thank you. So taking some of the comments that I said, so there are some lies in the statistics, and I have one concern, because in order to show the impact that they have, you need to make comparative studies. So my question is, if ICD-11, I know that you can search for the equivalent, but that equivalent is one by one, or you can have massive search and questions, because if as a country I have 20,000 data and I want to load it and have a reply right away, if not, it's not going to stop. Those are the doubts. Can you load massive? Can you make a massive load to ask a question? You have the equivalence tables, and from this point of view, you can make it with the grouping on data. By cost groups, you can do it. Something that I would like to, even Patty sent you the equivalence table, and you also have the equivalence table on the link for the Spanish version. It's still in English, but very soon will be in Spanish, because this is something automatic. I think we could even put it in the roadmap. Some very practical things. The idea of doing this session before discussing the roadmap, is to put our feet on the ground in the roadmap, knowing now what are the activities that we'll carry out. One of these activities might be this. So to explore furthermore the equivalence tables, having some indicators or some type of methodology to share this with the countries. Another thing that what Guatemala said it. It's very important, because we're talking about assuring being able to compare statistics, but we also have to do something in terms of statistics to show the added value of ICD-11. It's a bit more complex, but not complex really, but will require putting some more work, but you could include this on the roadmap from the information analysis point of view. This is leading this process, but I think that these two things are very important, and thanks to all It was very enrichful. Thank you for your effort. Okay, now we'll go to the groups forming session. We will divide into four with a very simple technique, beginning here. Each one of you will number themselves from 1 to 4. Group number 1 goes here, the second one here, and where we eat 3 and 4. Each one will review one component, not 4. You will focus on one component, and for a 30-minute period, they will review the proposal, what's been decided, based on our discussion and the support of countries from 2017, and they will say if they think or consider an additional activity, as Vilma said, something that's not there, more specific, and perhaps some priorities and perhaps specific terms, if the group think it's important. On each group, you must choose someone moderating, so not everybody speaks at the same time. We do suggest that. And someone also in charge of writing down the contribution of the group that later on is presents on the session. Can do so putting the points on Word, on the Excel, which Wilma send, or just by speaking. So that is the dynamic. Patty, should we begin? It's going to be 30 minutes. And the break, you can go to the coffee break, come back, and it's a bit more free. Thank you.
3, 4, 1,
2, 3, 4,
1,
2,
3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2,
3,
4,
1, 2, yes,
3, 4, 1, 2,
3,
4,
1,
2, 3,
4, 1, 2,
3, 4. Izquierdo, los dos.
One's on the left side, number 2 here, and 3 and 4 outside. Somehow outside. You will also receive the plan printed. Group number 1 will check component number 2, not the first one, because we already have the translation of ICD-11. Group number 2, the third one. Group number 3, the fourth one. And the fourth group, the fifth one. Of course, if you want to include something additional, do so. Thank you.
Grupo 1 acá, por favor. Gracias. Ya llamamos a todos. Llamamos a todos.
So we're calling everyone now.
Vamos tomando asiento, por favor, a sus respectivos lugares.
Please take a seat.
Vamos ocupando nuestros asientos.
Let's take our seats, please.
El grupo 1 ya está acá.
Group number 1 is already here. We have the representative.
Agradecemos que ya tomen asiento, por favor.
Please take a seat now.
Gracias. Entonces ya tenemos la presentación de los 4 grupos.
We have the presentation for the 4 groups. Each group knows when they are presenting.
Antes de empezar esta sesión,
Before we begin the session, because Robert and Nana must go now, immediately, very soon, like right now. So we want to take the opportunity, even though Nana is actually having a discussion, so we want to thank for their collaboration. A big round of applause for both. And especially, we would like to highlight that the fact of being able to launch ICD-11 in Spanish has been a result of collaboration, work between the Center, OPS, BILMA, and of course, without the WHO collaboration, this wouldn't be possible. We wouldn't be able to contribute national, regional, and globally, because we have also contributed globally. So once again, thank you so much for that collaboration, for that kindness. We felt so identified with you. You were so kind for everything. We will continue to do so. Thank you, Robert, and Nana. And also, have a great trip home. Well, thank you so much for this meeting, for coming, for the excitement and enthusiasm in this region, for the experience. Some people, older people mentioned this, and hopefully this will be one of the first countries in introducing this ICD-11. I know that in the Mediterranean region, the Arabic countries have a lot of interest. Who is going to be the first region? Now, great job. How do you say procedure? Hopefully, we will have a 3rd meeting. In the 3rd meeting, won't have translation. Thank you. A big round of applause for both. On my side, thank you so much. It's been a great meeting, great discussion, and presentations have been great. And as I said last time, the only way to move forward is having a family. And we have the Hufek family, and some of them are part of that great family, and they're participating in annual meetings. Speaking about opportunities on ICD-11 to make this family grow. And in that meeting, we've had other countries and also colleagues from the offices of the country, like Tamara from Argentina, and also the meetings. And I shouldn't forget others: Venezuela, Panamá, Nicaragua. And that is something key to us. We have the involvement on the offices of the country and the focal points of the country, which is extremely key for the regions and new countries. And hopefully, not only here, but in the region, in the annual meeting. That year we'll have in Canada, and we will have great participation from Americas, because you live in a region that truly has a great story, a great history on ICD, and I think will be for the benefit of many other countries. We'll take advantage of the experience and knowledge that you have. So we make the language barrier disappear, and it's really important to see how to overcome this, so we can make sure that the family is growing. It's extremely important. Thank you. We'll continue with the daily session. As you can see, we can see in the agenda now, we will have the 4 groups.
Le vamos a dar la palabra a Manuel, que
We're going to give the microphone to Manuel, that will speak about the work of group number 1. Well, if you open up the Excel, group number 1.
Bien. ¿Puedes recorrerla hacia la derecha, por favor, para que se van de la columna F?
On the F column. So we just want to highlight the countries that were part of this group: Argentina, Peru, Guatemala, Chile, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, and OPC in Washington. And the participants, and we want to highlight that we match the agreement and the collaborators and the people from Mexico. So we'll go to column A. In the construction of capabilities, we need to assess the capability of coding with ICD in each country. So we have a very long road. This is on the Coder Center. The idea is to have that information highly built with everything that was captured, so we can have these values with the different variables. So we think that in 2019, well, the rest of 2019, we will have this a bit more specified. The assessment of the coding capability on each one of the countries, also to develop training programs. And we keep the national levels and current uses, because even though Relaxis is coordinating, each country is the responsible to review the coders. In the following point, to develop training programs according to the profile that is kept on levels 1 and 2 for this and the transition, and this will depend on who will be using this tool, specifically for a researcher, for the coders, and even decision makers. Some points are linked to others. So following the following one, to train the national teams to implement updates till 2016, actually 2018. We did it in 2016. That was the meeting we had in Colombia, but now this is the official version in Spanish is 2018. So as we said yesterday, it is not a requirement, but it could be useful. And this is for national and regional levels. Relaxes have done these activities were virtual courses that Amanda talked about yesterday. Also, current use and transition. Because some of you throughout these work days have asked about training. So if there's an interest on behalf of the countries, that's okay. So for 2019 and 2020, we will have that transition. Participate on field test of science, that's it. We could even remove it, hoping that if from WHO or open, they maybe want to participate in a trial, perhaps with this new platform on ICD, perhaps we can have new efforts. But for now, that's out. To train the use of ICD in terms of instructors, coders, and medical information, experts for the area, and we keep it globally. Why? Because we depend on the tools and the package of implementation and training for the tools that were mentioned today by the colleagues of WHO. They are under development, so we also depend on that to translate it, and so we can truly understand and we can repeat those training courses with the users. And we also add to 2020 with the period of 2019, also the rest of 2019 to develop it, and 20 and 21 for the activity specifically. And we have to check a gradual strategy. To train the use of information tools to key players, this is related to the previous point. That is specifically for the final users, the coders, which means once you diffuminate, and with all the strategies that have been mentioned here, even advertisement, the way you sell and check the advantages and all the opportunities related for this new classification, that is for the following year, 21 and 22. To train the use of implementation in the automatized system, there are some users, even the host country, Chile, we talked about it. We depend 100% on the IRIS Institute so they can make this transformation. It is the engine with which you select the basic cost on the function. And that depends exclusively with the information we have now from the IRIS Institute. The users or those who want to take another jump to using IRIS, you need to adjust the dictionaries. The equivalence tables will be useful. We can make an exercise with the current codes and the ICD-11 codes to see what comes up with all the materials that they shared. But we increase it globally because we depend on IRIS. Even though each country may have their own dictionary, hopefully we will get to a point where everybody shares one Spanish dictionary to nurture all new terminologies with the codes from ICD-11. That is in the A21 and 22. That is a wide range in time because we depend on external factors, okay? To train mortality and morbidity analysis and quality of information, 2019, that is national and regional, specifically to what was mentioned when this changes or what might change in the revision of the ICD revision. Impact of activities with the coders, medical health, and 2019. We keep it in a national and regional level, current use and transition for the countries that are on that topic and to develop the profile of the coder and certification. At the beginning, we had some doubts on keeping this point, this roadmap, but at the end, we decided to keep it because it seems important, specifically with these changes, having qualified personnel and also a certification, a technical one, due to what's coming, right? Changes, and for the authorities to understand the need of the update. So that's for now. If you have any questions, go ahead.
La metodología de
The work methodology is going to be that immediately after the group speaks, we will have two interventions, only two interventions, and at the end, once the four groups have spoken, we will have another moment, but now just two interventions.
que estava pensando, por ejemplo,
I was thinking now to evaluate the capability to code with ICD in the country. So access of coders in Relaxis has already done somehow this, but this is a continuous thing. We thought it had to be continuous. Another thing that somehow might be continuous to assess the impact on training analysis with coders, physicians, because it's something that it's an ongoing process. So training for mortality and morbidity analysis, I don't know if 2019, and to train or to develop, because we'll still, if we impose an activity, developing indicators, because we're going to have to think about the changes, and so we have to develop, at least in 2019, what we want. What are the main changes we want to measure? So, perhaps for 2019, developing indicators to measure, to train, perhaps for 2020, 2022, and also, I don't know if you think, but I think it's key for 2019, somehow, this issue of having analysis to show added value on the classification. But that is not training, okay? We'll think, okay, sorry. But still, something important that you reminded me. We did this, and that's why we were showing countries and participants. Even though this is a plan, and from what we've seen, it is subject to adjustments. So it's important to take this into account, because you might visualize this with some trajectory from now till 3 years, but the needs, the features of each country might change. I think it applies for all the fields. I wanted to speak about the decision made on keeping the profile of the coder, and I really celebrate this. I don't know if some of the colleagues were in Colombia's meeting, but that was a key point, a concern, because the situation, the common denominator in the region is that coders, perhaps their work is not highly valued, and the importance is not valued. Some people work a lot, and perhaps being trained in a new classification will imply to invest in training. And we saw it in the census. A lot of people take hours from their family time, family hours, because they love their jobs. But it's important to leave it, because we need to position how important those people are, the work of those people, for the success of this process. So I celebrate that you didn't remove it. Just one intervention in the form to value, change the value train, for train in Spanish, but two different words.
decir todo, pero el
But ICD feed, which is the platform, the training in the platform, has a certificate. The people are certified in ICD-11. We'll continue with the agenda. Now we will hear group number 2. So we'll continue with that feature. We have technological infrastructure and information. In the group, first we need to have the requirements which we need for the ICD implementation. So ask WHO minimum requirements in technology, software and hardware, and connectivity. So when we have the specific feature that was introduced in Spanish but through a web platform, but what happens when we don't have a web platform? We have an offline system like the case of Ecuador, but what are the features I need? Databases that I'm downloading, or the engine, is it compatible or not with the information system we currently have? Or, better yet, what are the internet features? 1 mega, 2 megas are okay, so, or perhaps will cause delay or interference with different systems. That's what we're talking about with minimum requirements for hardware and software. So the hardware runs in a Linux version, 7 or 8 version, or 10, because in Linux, 74 bits, 64 bits, what? That is the first feature. And also, globally, because we need it for everyone. After that, we have the minimum requirements, then we do a diagnosis, national diagnosis and subnational diagnosis on the technological needs. Each country will have their own features. We don't specify the term, because perhaps some others have advanced more or the other way around. For that feature, perhaps one country will take 1 year, others 2, 5, or 6. So for the table in the group number 2, it was complex to define the specific terms for the technological capability or technological basis. And so it's limited by resources also. So what happens if I need 20,000 computers and another country needs just 11,000? So capability in terms of money, because that's a limit for some. So on that feature, we need to have a national and sub-regional diagnosis. Another key topic is to confirm equipment, national and global, since we have the technological component, and must include the staff. So under that feature, the technology, the IT staff of each country is the expert, or the ones that knows how to link it through the web service that was being presented, on what databases or flat asset we will be able to unify this system. And now we have to make the national and global system appropriate for the different variables. So what happens? Currently, we may have a system, as we mentioned before, or perhaps we don't. If we have a system, it's going to be a bit more complex, because we need to link all the features on the variables and catalogs which we currently have. So we need to make an internal work to, if we have an application that is offline or online, to generate that information, and that information must go to the user, and if so, must be appropriate, so this can be functional and better. Information processing and the entering of data and information. And we also have interoperability between apps and codings from ICD in the national system. On that criteria, interoperate means to simply change information, and for this information, both systems can read it. If I send you in the system that they are potatoes, you need to see potatoes. instead of potatoes you had yuca or sweet potato. So working with the same language in both systems or the several systems we have, so this can work. To promote the development of tools and apps and uses of ICD offline and online and mobile devices. What are we talking about? In the reality of the region, it's not that we have an implementation on connectivity and internet in all the health centers in the country or different countries. So what happens? We need to check tools that if you don't have internet, we will allow you to have an offline tool that will let you go to the registry in all health centers in the country. So when Robert talked about the test, yes, we may have several web services if I have connectivity, but if I don't, I can extract a databases in the local server or perhaps a flat file to use it in a computer that may not have a tablet. So to implement coding, automatic coding systems, automatize with Iris. That feature is extremely important, but here we have some considerations that we need to make appropriate. Like my colleague said, what do you mean by make appropriate? We know about some features. The Iris system will think about 10. So how can you link and make this migration on the Iris system to ICD-11? And this feature must be stated because Iris system, since it's an organization, a bracket organization, and needs to link the system to the new ICD. And once again, another one, recommendation, to adopt ICD-10 to avoid unnecessary changes on the implementation. I'm sorry, version ICD-10 version 2018. This is something very helpful, not mandatory, but there are many changes in the 2018 version, different to a version that in 2013 that it's going to make deep changes. So the last part are really recommendations, so we don't have such abrupt changes when changing. That would be it. Thank you.
Okay, we have two questions. I want to comment something that, let's see, can you please put it up on the screen again? Because some activities I believe are already there. I mean, the fact that it seems that the first one talked about requesting requirements for implementing the ICD-11 to the WHO. I believe they showed us the API ICD. The only problem is that this is for IT people and also in English. I don't understand it. But I think it's already there. Maybe what we need is for that to be translated so the IT person in any language whatsoever can actually use these requirements to do whatever concerning systems. That's what I understood. That's the first question I have. And the second one is that it says about adequate and implement a coding system, and that's not an activity of ours because it's from IRIS. We only own the dictionary, the term dictionary, and if we already have a dictionary, we have to enter our codes into the ICD-11 because everything else will be in charge of the IRIS group, and we'd only be responsible for coding the dictionary that we are using. Concerning the first question, I was just looking at the website for the API, and I have three main features. The first one is how you generate authentication in your token so you can access the service, and the other one is how you implement. This was in C#, Python, and Java, and PHP, okay? That's the introductory code, so you can actually load any of these features, but the requirements were not there, right? The requirements are not there, so we can do that. And for the IRIS system, if anyone here can help me, why I don't know how the IRIS system works, and I don't have it, so I can answer the second question.
Sí. Solo con respecto al...
Okay, just regarding the second one about this concept, because we were talking about these timings, and the second one is about carrying out a subnational and national diagnosis of technological needs. I understand that this is a diagnosis. It's a diagnosis so we can know later on whether I will have ICD-10 offline later on, online or on a mobile device. It's not precisely about supplying this to everybody. So a diagnosis is not for such a long term. I'm saying this specifically because if they were thinking that the various countries should have everything they need concerning technology for an online implementation, maybe we should have another activity in there. But the activity, I mean, what do we mean by by a diagnosis? Oh, sorry, it's not a question. It's a little bit of the topic that you were talking, and I understood that the second point was being picked up as something you couldn't specify whether it was for a 5 or 2 or 10 years period, because you weren't sure when countries would be able to acquire all the technology, and the point here is about a diagnosis, and diagnosis does have a limited time, so if it's about acquiring technology, then it could be a different point. It's a comment rather than a question. Implemented a similar system that has the two online, offline modes, whatever. After doing the diagnosis, then we did an implementation plan based on the diagnosis. If the country has resources, then it's easy. You just give everyone then the connectivity they need or whatever devices they need, and that's it. But if the country has no money, then your plan has to be like, okay, in this medical unit, the computer they have is one like this. And here, for example, I can give them internet and operate online. Here, for example, they have a really powerful computer but no internet. So here I will be installing the system on the computer and operate on offline. So then you have to perform a diagnosis at the medical unit level so you can elaborate a plan regarding the implementation of this on every medical unit. That's what we are missing, the implementation plan derived from a diagnosis. Okay, now we have the presentation by group number 3. Okay, well, I just wanted to comment that our group was made up of Mexico, Argentina, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Uruguay, and our colleagues from PAHO and Costa Rica. I wanted to let you know that, well, we were a pretty active group and talked a lot, so we weren't as disciplined as group 1, and we were unable to complete everything on time. But we rather tried to refine the activities. Actually, in general terms, we noticed that some of the activities, I mean, there were like 2 or 3 activities that were consolidated into one, or there were some activities that were too specific, and we made a decision to make them general, so every country could make their decision they deemed convenient. So, I do want to comment that the main point is about ensuring the comparativeness and quality of statistics. So the first decision was that there was a mixture of both, and the idea was to have a division concerning actions related to quality and actions related to comparativeness. So the first one, well, we knew that this section was about having reference tables, and actually we already have them. So the reflection was that we have to empower ourselves with those tables, analyze them, use them, be proficient in when it comes to them. And that analysis must also ensure that these tables allow for the traceability of each and every term between ICD-10 and ICD-11, and then we had a discussion concerning the level of de-aggregation that we will be able to apply to those convergences, and it's part of what we will have to do when we start exploring these tables, use them, and be empowered with them. The other point would be about developing an impact analysis strategy for mortality and morbidity statistics due to the change or switch from ICD-10 to ICD-11. And we took a long time on this one because we started imagining different scenarios, different studios that we could develop so as to explore that aspect. So, of course, having or rather doing bridge studies using a double coding both in ICD-10 and ICD-11, so we could determine the impact of changing coding or coding. Actually, we had a discussion about the fact that it may be done differently even. For example, it may be about working with retrospective studies, and then the countries will decide. For example, they may use the previous year. We already have the information coded in ICD-10, and we can compare that to ICD-11 and see what happens. Other countries may even go even more backwards. But the idea is to be able to perform those studies using the information that we are processing. And the idea is to start now on the information that we are coding and then do this exercise of codifying or coding under C11, ICD-11, and that would allow us to verify whether coding under ICD-11 may take us to another code as well. It's a way of evaluating our coding as well. Then we have another aspect, which would be about ensuring the availability of standardized lists for presenting statistics about mortality and morbidity under ICD-11. And here we also had a discussion about the importance of knowing the grouping criteria for those tables. And concerning quality, which is the other main aspect, this was mostly related to comparativeness of the information. And there was a specific action which is about monitoring quality indicators for mortality and morbidity information, internationally recommended. So, we had all this discussion, but mostly because this is an aspect also included on the plan for strengthening our vital statistics. And our discussion was about the fact that it was important for there to be a shared methodology and a commitment from the various countries to report whatever is indicated in that methodology. We will see which indicators are going to be monitored and the frequency of the reports. And now we know what the indicators are concerning ICD-10, but we need to perform the analysis and see whether these indicators are the same for ICD-11 or will we be expanding this to other indicators. And well, there was also a note to ensure that we do have the methodology for calculating those indicators in ICD-11. And the other point which we also talked about was about performing comparativeness studies in specific cases in different areas so as to evaluate the coding quality. It's this thing about being able to evaluate coding under both classifications and evaluate whether the new classification may take me to another code or if there are any inconsistencies between both classifications, and that's what we have. Concerning the bridge studies and the comparativeness between ICD-10 and 11, and the advantage that we are going to have this time compared to the change from 9 to 10 is that these tables that were called translating between classifications, at least we agreed to have those after ICD-10 was implemented, but now we have this simultaneously. But the comment I wanted to make is that we talk a lot about codes, and I think that for the specific mobility case, we should also think about the impact this change has on the definition of our main diagnosis. And that implies designing a study in a different manner rather than just comparing codes under or between one classification and another. I completely agree with you because actually I believe this discussion about there is something that we all had, but it would be really important for the group to start participating in these meetings every 2 weeks, and we could do this. We could be discussing external costs, for example, or discuss something else, and this is something I agree with. If a group, for example, wants to, I mean, because how are we going to proceed? Actually, are we going to set these periods and then we notify everybody so they can make their comments and then we wrap up? So if there is a group, for example, who, oh, Spanish is difficult at this time in the evening. If a group agrees, then I mean, you were really smart because you put something so general that you can address everything. It's about developing a plan. And actually, I'd like to propose an activity so we can have at least a few indicators for ensuring the comparativeness of this. So, for example, it may be mortality due to diabetes, some key indicators that all countries can be monitoring, which are the main changes we will be identifying. I was in that group, and actually, the activity stated that monitoring was going to take place on specific indicators, specific health indicators, but what we discussed in the group was that we actually require doing this at a general level, and then every country will decide on their own indicators that they want to apply traceability on. But we decided that to develop a strategy of this, and then by developing this strategy, you can then define maybe the gold standard indicators that will be followed in the entire region, and then every country will establish the rest. But that's why we decided to change it to developing a strategy on how to go about this. And this was good, but I believe this thing about indicators is something important to be determined about these regional indicators that we already know that are going to change and that are important to be monitored. And yeah, that's why we changed that to a strategy rather than the action of monitoring. We need to work on a strategy. And we had this discussion that, for example, we could work in groups for these comparativeness studies, for example, or mortality. It can be developed by a group of country and mobility by another group. The idea is that all of that is described in a strategy, in an integral strategy, because the activity only had actions we are going to monitor and so on, rather than in a planned strategy with concrete activities and actions. And then you can refine this in a plan where some people are accountable and we have defined timelines. I wanted to ask a question. Do we already have any indicators that have been used in ICD-10 or mortality and morbidity statistics for ICD-10? I believe we are missing the definition of whether we need to change any indicators or if they will be used once again for ICD-11 because, for example, there is a basic indicator, indicator of signs and symptoms. We all know which chapter they are in. Well, that indicator, will it be affected by our move to ICD-11? Will some codes be taken away, or we could analyze something like that to see whether it remains useful or not? The other thing, not so useful or junk codes. We could review the current codes that have been proposed and then determine whether they are the same or if we are going to change anything and which codes correspond under ICD-11. But right now you were mentioning something, for example, diabetes is going to change, so we have to propose new indicators. Because of what you are commenting, we do have the possibility to increase how much specificity or the codes that we will be trying to add more complexity or specificity, or if they will be affected by ICD-11, but that's something that has to be discussed in the group. And then it would be about proposing modifications or incorporating new indicators or defining indicators that we will be subject to in the region under ICD-11 after reviewing all proposals from the countries, because if we just start seeing that every country will be working on their own indicators, then there is no point. What are we here for? I believe that it's because together we need to define a set of indicators that's useful for everyone. That's what we are here for. After these four groups, there will be more time for questions. Or do you need to have the slide on the screen? Okay, some things are going to change because something that also came up in the group was about the elements in relation to underlying cause selection. We don't know how much those change and if this is going to have any impact or not. When we were discussing this about comparisons, it was only the basic causes or underlying causes in ICD-10 in relation to how that code is structured in ICD-11. So it also we also saw the need, okay, that this is just going to be about the traceability of this, but in relation to the quality of this coding, to what extent a term ends up becoming another code or a change. So we proposed taking, okay, what the doctor writes, and then have this go through Iris and then see what code matches in the ICD-11 and how many changes would be there from ICD-10. And we were discussing this about quality to see how much coding changes between one version and another. But we had the question that we didn't know yet, even though the guide is already there, which the rules are for selecting morbidity, and even though it said that they don't change, morbidity doesn't change. But no, I'm talking about the CIE, because remember, if we are going to talk about the traceability between one and the other, we are taking the basic cause, which has already been has had a huge amount of rules applied to, and we are looking at another code. But we had the question about to what extent this selection didn't change or make a change in some of these. And I want to apologize to our facilitator for these interventions and mine, by the way, because we shouldn't be intervening yet. I believe it's totally justified for the group to develop a strategy from our point of view in different levels and different areas can be applied on the analysis, and that's what we consider should actually be in the strategy. It's one thing to do an analysis of what is understood as an underlying cause in terms of what we were discussing yesterday, main causes, quality indicators that are already there and have to be mapped in ICD-11. For example, a heart attack went to the wrongly defined chapter. We already have those. But I believe the main detail in the analysis is about defining what I want to analyze. I can analyze so many things, but I have to define something as a part of that strategy. What actually caught our attention is at the health policy level. Okay, main ones, key movements, diabetes, compromised indicators. So what do we need to do and then map this into ICD-11? And if the group of those who are working on this analysis consider that it's also necessary to perform another analysis, well, I believe it has to be incorporated, but we need to have a clear definition of what we want, and many people are talking about different things. This code is going to change, or the coding is going to change. What do I mean by the coding changing? Someone who is not so familiarized might say, okay, the starting coding is no longer the same, the code is no longer what it was back then. And I believe that changed already, so we need to have something clearly defined, determined in terms of its impact from the public health point of view, a very technical matter, how these basic causes affect at the rule level and so on. But from my point of view, that's a level of accuracy that has to be included in that strategy, identifying three areas that we consider have to be analyzed. But if it's not, otherwise it's easy getting lost between what we should be analyzed and what we analyze. And once again, I apologize. I believe that either way, we should be implementing this strategy because otherwise there is too much left in the air. So, in relation to basic cause of death, concerning what we know so far, 95% certainty that this is not going to change in the 2016 update. What's already there is not going to change, but just there is just this thing about waiting for the mortality group so they can talk about this reference guide. And now, in relation to morbidity, does it change? It does, but this effect is not clear in practical terms, at least for me. But this is something important, so my only suggestion would be about below developing, including implementing. Yeah, very briefly, I believe that considering the comments we have, we should revise the impact on morbidity because we tend to forget morbidity and its impact on mortality. On mortality, as it's been commented before, considering these updates and the 2018 edition, there was a change between 2015 and 2018. It was an important change. There are some pathology trends changing and so on. Between 2018 and ICD-11, there will be no changes, it seems. So maybe this will be lesser, but considering morbidity, the fact that we are picking up the main diagnosis does change morbidity statistics trends. And that's why, because there were some rules that went away, there was a special meaning for main affliction, and now we are talking about the main diagnosis because people used to say, if I have more than one, put the one that consumed the greater amount of resources. Now it's not like that. You pick up the main diagnosis, which led into the admission. At the end of the day, when you look at the ICD-10 clinical modification, that's the meaning it has. And how do we know that? Because of the consultations we have had in our forum, right? Even our Chilean colleagues, right? Where people are wondering, hey, what do I put in the main diagnosis if the main affliction is something different? It does change, but we need to see how much, and that's something that we need to assess. But something, there will be an impact, and we have to be prepared for it.
Sí, la última. No,
Now the last one. The point is that each country must be very aware. If you haven't implemented 2016 updates and you're going to just jump, it's not necessary to implement, but you'll jump from X version ICD-10 to 11, you will have an impact. Not for those who previously implemented the updates for 2016, so pay attention to that. There's one group pending and then number 4. So number 4, go ahead. And a big round of applause for that discussion. Victor Hugo Alvarez. We have a group with colleagues from Argentina, Venezuela, Mexico, Honduras, Panama, and another colleague, yes. So in summary, we believe that the proposed activities in the recommendations are very appropriate, but they need some order in the application, and they require the inclusion of a new activity, which we have proposed, and should be the first one. In OPS and WHO must provide materials, guidelines, presentations that will allow us to unify the communication of our work that we need to do after this meeting, which is the lobbying with the ministries, with those who will approve or somehow defend a resolution for the adoption and adaptation of ICD-11. So, for instance, the document being discussed at the Assembly will arrive very near when we show this concept. So it would be important for those responsible of moving the transition process to ICD-11 if we could have those documents before, in this period, before May, we can learn and make the ministers aware and also get the institutions involved, those directly involved in the adoption process of ICD-11. So we can have a unified standing that backgrounds the issue of some activities here, which is to accomplish that those international commitments can be achieved in a assembly resolution that will provide the timeline and the mandate so each country can make their transition process towards ICD-11. So with this, the activities that continue and that will be nurtured by what happens at the different recommended lines is, well, first of all, here we have the order of priorities. Simultaneously, we can achieve those commitments and manage to strengthen those conditions nationally, which will manage the statistics and also the implementation of the classifications in the countries, so we can align them and to prepare them for management, and also to elaborate a transition plan from the country following all the recommendations and jointly or simultaneously to elaborate a plan and to prepare different materials useful to make this communication and awareness. And so this comes from an activity, an awareness plan with all users and all those responsible to implement ICD-11. And finally, I skipped that activity number 2 is simultaneous to this process of preparing the materials, which is integration of the different partners, not just institutions involved, but researchers, the academia, etc. Even with them, we can prepare those materials that can be useful to make this communication and awareness process with all the different users, even the population. And finally, in that management of linking the partners, we need to include the political regional and sub-regional areas, Mercosur. There are different areas where they adopt these policies on international organisms and they co-help so the countries can move forward in the compliance of these policies globally. So they could be interesting partners to promote or strengthening or safeguard the decisions. And finally, management with BMS to make materials available, printed material. It's been said here that it's going to be digital, but we will require physical documents for communication, for training, etc. So that's, in summary, we defend, of course, all the activities. We ratify it, and that's it. Thank you. Any questions? I just have a comment. I think that 2 weeks ago I asked again Nana about this issue about the printed material. She said no. Now, who needs it printed? Because in the link you have, you can download basically each chapter in Spanish with Word documents. So you can see together where to download it. The idea is for each one of you to download your own classification and what you expect from this classification. So if you want to do external causes, you can go to the external cause chapter, only print what you need. So far, well, if the Global Assembly decides something else, I don't know. Any other questions, comments? No? Very good. If there are no further questions and comments, Dr. Abila. It's very fast because today we need to leave early. So thanks everyone for your comments. What we're doing now is to consolidate and to send you in the same way we did it before. Sadly, we don't have with us the Caribbean, and so should we send it to the Caribbean? Well, we have to discuss how to do it. But basically, for us, this is an extremely important commitment. So we'll try to have the resources and do things more and more jointly. And the next closing session is what? I have a question. From out of these groups that were formed, are we going to continue to work internally in the proposals, or that's it? To communicate, to exchange emails, because it was proposed that once you have awareness with the authorities, you can build up a material that is equal for all countries, so we don't make mistakes, so we can truly have awareness in a positive way, because that is going to be like a basic finding, what are the impacts and so on. So it was proposed in our group to prepare material, like when we train on ICD-10. And so each country could, well, obviously add their own reality, of course. This is our diagnosis, etc. But my question was that, this is it with the group, or should we continue? Will continue to be connected to make a follow-up to what we did, so we can exchange emails, or I don't know. Yes, regarding what Amanda said, in my country, we have the fever of technology. The new government that that took over in August last year, and the Ministry of Health. And on each speech, they say we need information. We need to. They don't speak about anything else. All patients will have a doctor, and the doctor will have all of the information from north to south, from east to west. They will know about it. They only speak about IT, but that is in his head, because reality is completely different. He is the minister, but doesn't have his feet on the ground. So the assembly, when speaking about this topic, we need to make very clear when and where to implement ICD-11 as a country, because I can imagine him going out of the airplane, doing lobbying, making a press conference. Tomorrow we'll begin with ICD-11. I can actually hear him. I can actually listen to him, and this is awful to us, because Guillermina is alone. Well, I have a colleague. We're just two working with this issue of ICD. So, yes, it's on that side, it's a problem. So, what other cooperation institutions are involved? Apart from WHO, Relaxi, we have the Global Bank, the World Bank, IDB. Can we ask for cooperation to them or not? That's another question. I also heard yesterday and today the new death certificate format. What are those modifications, and can I have it, because we are reprinting new forms for the death certificate in the country, so to incorporate those suggestions, which I think were related with neonatal and perinatal diseases. I write it down, I'm sorry. In the Colombia workshop, there was a colleague participating that didn't came today, but I don't know if you're going to integrate this in a single work group or another group like BERM, where we can exchange questions. My colleague perhaps received some emails. Now I'm going to receive those emails so we can together receive the different notifications or questions. And regarding for Becker, we haven't received any emails, anything. I sent a group of 5 questions, especially in diabetes. I don't know if they're on holiday, on vacations, but just to know. And that's it. From the Becker Forum, it surpassed the expectations we had. We've received questions. Actually, when doing some questions to WHO, they've taken a while. And we've tried to give a fast answer, but the questions arriving, they're not easy. It's not easy, because if they were easy, you would have an answer. So we have several questions. We're getting about 4 or 5 on a daily basis, and we've tried to answer them. When they're complicated, the last one I can tell you, it was mitochondriopathy. Basically 3 days with Adriana reviewing this, because it's not just answering. We don't have a code. So if we answer we don't have a code, well, the coder has to give a solution to answer this to the system. So we analyze, we review, and check where this could fit. But yes, we will answer all of them, I promise. The fact that it doesn't have a code, where I have a case of a death certificate that is waiting to be coded, I didn't find the answer on the internet. A vitreous tumor, 1-year-old kid. Another important topic. Patricia Solis knows about this. Since 2011, I've been speaking about this, and other colleagues were speaking regarding the use of the issue of human resources. Those trained in the classification, instructors, coders for medical information, from whatever level, up to which point in the Global Assembly can you convince, make health ministers aware regarding categorizing in the budget of each country to that specific human resource force. Up to which point can you suggest to avoid, right, leakages? Now we have a change in the government, and heads are on the ground. People qualified, people with years of experience in coding, and now we have to start from scratch. Well, thank you so much for the comments, because right now the final moments is when you begin to see the real doubts. So I have a couple. For instance, I want to speak about the forum. Dr. Roberto Becker Forum, as Amanda said, it is a high-level forum and comes from a simple question to a very complex question. And many times we don't have the answer in the office, and you have to ask questions as she explained. But just like them, they have functions, and that is like an extra. In Relaxis framework, these are different groups, and you're part of them. Many times these are efforts that they are carrying out of the schedules they have, and they are complex. Fortunately, with both collaborative centers, we've done that alliance so they can reply because it's a need. And it's been said, they are completely surpassed. So to those who want to watch the answers, you can go to PAHO, to the Relaxis area, or just Relaxis, and you will see it. So it's really wide. You will find the information, and you'll see the huge amounts of questions that have been done. And sometimes they have to ask a team to check what's the best one and get an agreement on those collaborating centers. That is regarding the forum. The other thing is, last year, by the end of last year, as a recognition to coders, we had a small meeting. It was impossible to meet the 7,000, and well, we know we need it, but the objective is to try and see a new profile taking advantage of the moment and how we can elaborate a technical career in order to elevate the level. But that has to be a proposal that we went in a regional approach. And we've done many of the things in that way, and we've been successful. So yes, everybody knows the results from Dr. Rivora didn't talk about the reality. So what do we need to do? We need to take advantage of some work lines that could be useful. Yes, the census, and I think that Bruno explained it in the introduction. If you didn't pay attention, well, here we have the issue, which gives us an image, but at a point, because things change and modify in time, but it's providing something we didn't have, information about what's happening. So regarding this, the Coders Network that's working on creating this, spontaneously, there's a WhatsApp with a huge line of emails, good morning, good night. It was really nice, okay, but not enough. And it's a need that came. Now, what we want to see is how to make a registry and to provide attention to this. And we can take the opportunity to see how we can build this technical career and to motivate, according to the census, how many codifiers, and Bruno has introduced this, they are on the last year, and probably they're going to retire. So these are some things that we also need to state and think about that, and probably will be in this great work plan that we're working on. There are many other things. When doing the summary, we will share it to in other questions. So just to go to your opinion, how do we do it? This is a guideline, a roadmap, recommendations. But what can this group do with the countries to develop a national roadmap? This is also useful for us. From this guideline, from this plan, from these recommendations, we can build our work plan and also our priorities to obtain resources, right? So, yes, we also establish in these recommendations what our priorities are or what is more feasible to us. So we really wanted to have someone from IT with a different vision, not just IT, we're going to fix the computer, but the other vision. I don't know if it's possible. We know it's a challenge. We know we have to build some material for communicating. So what do we do? From this guideline, this roadmap, should we build a work plan? Because last year we also said nobody wants to really finish this translation, we need the resources, and we managed to be successful. But basically, this is what we do. So we can't be committed to everything, but hopefully we will do the best. From my side, yes. The last one, because
Dando disculpas a las jefas de unidad, pero un poco.
Apologize to the unit headers, but it's about the dynamic Amanda was asking about. This work has been done, and have everyone's email. You have had at least 2 emails from me, sorry, but that will remain in touch. Everything will be shared because the idea is for information to be shared freely. And of course, when we have to be careful, it will be told. You will be told this is only for you. And of course, I trust that you will not share anything outside this group, and the emails are already there. And generally, even though those work dynamics may change, it can be improved upon. We do have and have had that, and that's why we have this product and others. We have these communications every 2 weeks, and that happens every time, so we can address different issues now. Which group can this go to? It also depends on you. I'm sure that when you leave, you have all this information you didn't have before, and now you have to identify what you like the most. Unless you want to work on everything, and that's up to you as well. So, but that's dynamic. It's not static. So there is no single model where we're like, no, that's how it's going to be. That's my vision, though, which can be improved upon. But we have your emails, and also, not only we have people in here in Colombia, and there were other people, and we are going to also talk to those people who helped us develop this plan. We will be telling them about what happened here, because it would be really mean if we didn't. And as William was saying, the Caribbean English-speaking countries were also there as well. So it's not only us. They have been here. They have been supporting us. And of course, they are still within the framework. So just so everything can be clearly understood regarding who participates. And but I insist, this is a dynamic that can be improved upon together, and thank you. I just wanted to communicate a concern I have when I look at the networks, and I also want to echo the concern from our colleague from Paraguay, because in the networks and the note, it is presented as if this were the official release of the Spanish version of the ICD, and we have been discussing that we have to work on a roadmap and so on first. So maybe is there a way so we can explain on the network itself? I mean, for me, this is no official launch at all or release. We are just getting ready, and if we already have a Spanish version, yes, but it will be subject to review, and it's not the finished version, because I believe, I mean, as our colleague from Paraguay was saying, we are going to be back, and people will be like, hey, give me the link because I want to download this and put it in our system, because people in our countries have this view I was talking about at the beginning of the day. People believe they need to have the shiny new thing, and it's just about downloading a catalog, put it in their system, and that's it. And I think we have been discussing how it's not like that for 2 days by now. So how can we contain those expectations that were given, which may cause people to be a little bit overexcited, if you will? I believe that related, and also commenting on the emails, because at least on the activity series we had, which I think it's really important. Of course, we are not in the position to make the WHO assembly release a resolution or whatever, but there are activities we can do at our level. For example, preparing training materials. We cannot be those who execute the other activities because we don't have that leadership capacity and so on. But preparing the training material is something we can do. So that was my question. Are we going to work in the same groups we were to start communicating and submitting a proposal that has to be reviewed by the entire group? And that's the question I have, because it's really important to clarify how this is going to be presenting. And going back to what Carla says, it's important to see, for example, how this is going to be presented to the authorities. Fortunately, I have a director who is the best, who is aware of these issues. But when it's not the case, you have to struggle. And it seems you were speaking Chinese and they were speaking Russian and or whatever. So it's basic that when you have 1, 2, or 3 slides because you cannot take the time over, the idea is that we can see how this is going to be presented on different level, and the proposal is that all countries have the same information. And and actually, it's done, if you will, and this discussion, I mean, the implementation version is over. This was a discussion that actually we had with Fernanda, and we'd like to give the chance to people in the different countries to be able to know this and also participate. I don't know. It's one thing. Because as of today, things are more participative in general. We have, for example, this maintenance platform for ICD-11, and this is a very valuable instrument. So, and that's the reality. And by the end of March, it will be uploaded on the main site. So we call this a release, and it feels a little bit scary because that's what it was called in the English version, launch. But so people said, okay, let's launch as well, and this version is ready. But if anyone finds anything, it's for you. The idea is for you to play around, explore this, so we can have some time. It was something deliberate that we discussed. Fernanda didn't want to call it a launch, actually. And something that may be useful, and I understand that because even last year in June, when this launch took place, and it was very publicized, and it was really surprising for me because in Mexico we have the Secretary of Social Security and Labor, among others, and I don't know how they got hold of our number because it even appeared on the news and so on about the transgender issues and so on. And there was a user who wanted to know where she could obtain ICD-11 because her boss was saying, hey, I already saw that this was launched in the news. Look for it because they were doing some study with external causes in their jobs, so it's not even a health-related issue, but it's related. And that's just an example, but the most extreme case, I was really surprised that there was this level of dependency. And there are many other states, entities, federal entities wondering about ICD-11, and what we did, and it may be useful here, is that there was a communique issued by the Secretariat of Health, letting people know that while there was a launch indeed, and it had this and that feature, for now, in Mexico at least, it was not going to be used yet, and that Mexico would be participating starting on this date on translation tasks, pilot testing, that we have this open work, even giving people a link. But for now, that we were going to continue using ICD-10, that was the comment to such a degree that there were a lot of expectations, as you're commenting. But I believe the person responsible for generating the vital statistics, health, morbidity, mortality statistics, must have this understanding and clarify this to everybody else. I mean, I don't blame people. I mean, people want the shiny, newest thing, but maybe the person responsible in the country has to communicate that. Those who are here represented are those who have been participating in the previous workshops and are part of this team that is participating from the translation up to the testing phase, and now we have this roadmap and everything else. And maybe what you can communicate is that the advantages were shown, what we have to participate in, that we are going to get there one way or the other, but we need to consider everything surrounding this. So this may also be useful, an official communique from the country, those who generated information, and that's what we did in July last year after the launch. We had to issue this official communique. And the situation became a little bit calmer, and we found out that Mexico was participating on something which gave a plus to the country. And now it's the truly last intervention. ICD-11 is already there. It's been there for 3 or 4 years by there, so everybody can make an opinion, so everybody can know that. Not everybody has had the opportunity, but it's there. Even any individual can contribute to ICD. What we have done is that we have made that available in Spanish, so those who want to begin and start using it can do so, but it's up to every country, so don't be afraid. You cannot hide it anymore, if you will, because, no, really, because there is no way. No. The only thing you have to do is to communicate that. And we have to be aware of this because people will be there asking questions sooner or later. Sorry. And sorry. Okay, so from the suggestion given by Amanda twice to continue working on this roadmap, I think it's perfect, Amanda. The only thing that no in a group by group basis, because each group is working on a part. Let's work all of us together on the entire roadmap. I mean, we do have the possibility to stay in touch virtually, but everyone should be working on everything. And just to wrap up finally and truly wrap up ICD-11 for everyone, everywhere. Okay, first of all, thank you. I want to thank all of you for the discussion, which is really good. For all this information, and it was a very open discussion with the challenges and successes, and we will be there for the transition, but also there are problems concerning quality for now, which for ICD-10, I'm not sure, it's difficult for me, so then the problem is how to maintain the sustainability or the strengths ICD-11 has, and also to prepare everybody for a transition plan for ICD-10 to ICD-11. And that's important for studies and also for mapping between ICD-10 and 11, and also for capacity building and improving our assessments for those trainings. So it's critical for us to establish priorities and minimum priorities in the region, because as we have seen in these 2 days, that there are many conditions between one country and another. So it's a different thing regarding how to leverage these advantages of our exchanges of technical assistance and information in the region and our countries, because there are many experts in the collaborative centers, and also there are many technicians among the authorities, the national authorities, and how can I say that? Something said by Vilma. How to engage other countries, to involve other countries in the Caribbean, English, French, and also that part of the Caribbean which is Dutch, if I remember correctly, Dutch, yes, because there is there are some translations here, but if we work a little bit longer, we need to involve people from these countries because it's always there. Because I mean, the discussion is really rich, and those countries are not a part of that right now, and that's a pity, and that's sad because this is a very valuable exchange, and it's priceless. So we have to improve on our coordination, and also those who are experts have to coordinate better between the various countries and the regions. Something else is about ensuring these tools, references, materials which are available in all languages. So they are available in all languages: Spanish, French, Portuguese, and also these tools that are in Spanish that you have in Latin America, and we need to translate them into English or French because these are very useful. Is that correct? It is. And something else, which is equally important, concerning the transition plan, which is about this promotion and awareness on every country at the national and subnational levels, which is based on studies, for example, bridge studies, and also other studies that explain our successes and challenges for ICD-10 in a more appropriate language and a simpler language for our target audiences so as to improve our data quality on health systems and also vital statistics with the main objective of improving the health of our populations in this region. And that's it. The only thing I want to say is that the recommendation is to prepare between today and January 2022. Okay, get ready for the transition and also get ready in how to adapt this to your situation in your country. But it's more important to have this exchange, especially in countries that are having problems, because I don't want to leave anyone behind. Thank you. Okay, now I have the duty of closing this activity, which for us, as a Pan American Organization of Health, also has a very important connotation, and it's a coordinated work between two technical units that have some common topics and that have to be worked upon in a harmonious manner, respecting our lines of cooperation that we all have. For example, everything related to ICD-10 and collaborative centers, it's all the coordination that I'm in charge of, and ICD-11, which has been coordinated by Vilma, is in another unit. But now, while we're looking at this, there are some things where we have common grounds, and all of us have been working all the time on many subjects, and sometimes I imagine it's not been an easy task to determine some points, how do we progress, and so on. So this meeting has allowed us, given us that opportunity, to be able to establish those working mechanisms that were needed, and that I believe, anyway, We have been working indeed on that, and now it will strengthen our efforts and make us able to continue on that regard. So, in that sense, I believe from the organization, that's a really fundamental element. But aside from that, all of these that we have discussed and what we have been working on is within the framework of the action plan for strengthening our vital statistics that the organization has established and has a mandate for all countries. So all of this is within that dynamic, and also with the launch that will be taking place for the strengthening of these systems of health information, will absorb this vital statistic plan, if you will, and will become a larger entity, and therefore it will be stronger, and to the extent that we join forces, that will be the case indeed. And I totally agree concerning what Adrian has addressed. I fully agree, 100%, no question. What we have to do now, because a very important component of these meetings has been continuity and also trying to give a background in this fusion we have had for ICD-11. What do we have now? Because I believe Adrian has explained ICD-11 very well, and we are going to support them. So from this technical unit, we make the commitment, because this is about conclusions. We are going to review this plan, which fortunately we are participating in this working plan. We are going to, of course, be participating in the sessions. We are going to be inviting and expanding other sessions as well that we are carrying out, so we can continue working in a coordinated manner. And in that revision for that working plan, the idea is to contribute all kinds of resources, so we can move along that transition process, which didn't start yesterday, but we know that. We are going to also guarantee that collaborative centers really have all the support that they need from our office, so without ignoring all the other commitments. And these are the activities that they have in their working plan that's also related for ICD-11. There will be a wider, broader instance, so they can continue providing support in the same manner, and maybe even with a greater support, maybe from the participation point of view, maybe in events, financial contributions and coverage that we are interested in. As it was, since there was a training plan presented, right? It was presented before. That training plan will be reviewed, and that's a training plan that was consulted with the will be consulted with the collaborative centers. But in this new context, we want to review that. We want to discuss that with the collaborative centers to make any necessary adjustments on what we could expedite in this context. For example, updates. There, I was in one of these groups, and we said no, we can make adjustments. The update plan for any countries that want it, we are going to expedite that. We are going to allocate more resources so this happens faster. So in that sense, it's part of the commitments that we are undertaking, and we are going to disseminate this coders census to all of you as soon as we can, both the results given by Dr. Ribota and also the census from all countries. We have sent these to people who have asked for it, but it will be shared with each and every one of you, so we can work on that, because you can work out what may be useful on this plan and what we already have. We also have this census, or rather the database that was formed from the 110,000 doctors. Not all of them are from the Americas, and there is an analysis on that as well, and there may be some premises that may be useful for us as well. So the analysis that we did in these two code census for coders and certifiers are something that we are going to share, so all of you have this as part of those reference documents, and also we will be adjusting as needed. One of the things that were mentioned is about this transition within the framework of the various information subsystems, and I believe it was mentioned to me by Victor Hugo. In that group, yeah, we obviously are committed in this information systems unit and health platforms. We have to see how we are going to redirect many of these cooperation lines that in this session are really useful for us to think about them once again, especially in this planning stage and even for the next biennial. And we will also be sending you the revision that is just being wrapped up of the certificates in coordination with CELADE, so you can see and you can look at the results and the standard certificate, what we have found, and most likely we are missing information. For example, Lorena. Yes, Lorena was saying, okay, we have an official certificate, but we don't use it. And those details, we are missing those because we were assuming that it's perfect, but it's not because it's not being used. And these aspects are really important to complete all these aspects. And I believe that something that we will be addressing once again is our technical career for coders, and that's something that we have to work on with other technical units that are in charge on educating and training our human resources in health, and we will be addressing that because I believe that while it's a country decision, these are lines that we need to start pushing for because the coder is a fundamental element in this entire chain. It's key. So, we will be looking at the same in this consultation. We'll be looking at some of the topics that have been transcendental here, maybe expanding the role of the experts. We have a roster, and we are going to join forces and look at this expert roster and see how we could support each other within the framework of the South-South cooperation and triangulating technical cooperation, how that could happen. We know that we don't have enough. It's only two people. Guillermina is saying it's only me, so it's pretty complex if we do it like that. But one way or the other, once again, well, I want to thank each and every one of you for participating, and specifically those who had a certain pressure in the last few days for them to be able to participate. And we thank you for that. Have a great, safe trip back, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you so much.